that's how I think about sales, is that it's this ongoing conversation. And by the way, conversation is two ways. It's not talking at people, it's talking with. So I'm not here to just show up and word vomit all over you and give you my sales pitch. I'm here to have a conversation.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Take Back Mondays, the podcast to help you love Mondays again. And today I have exactly the guest who's going to help us love Mondays again, because she is the sales maven and she's going to teach us today some better sales tactics. So today I'm really pleased to have on the podcast Nikki Rausch, founder of the Sales Maven. She teaches small businesses and entrepreneurs how to sell without feeling icky. Don't we all need that? She's also the host of the Sales Maven podcast, which is a weekly podcast with a no sleaze, no slime, and no stress approach to building your business. And lastly, but not least, she is the author of an amazing book that I read, and that's actually how I discovered her, which is called The Selling Staircase. Welcome to the show, Nikki. I'm so pleased to have you today.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to have this conversation with you.
Likewise. So, Nikki, I think that my clients who are also solopreneurs, subject matter experts, professionals who for some reason decided to go into business for themselves, all tell me the same thing. Selling feels icky. It's not something they enjoy. They would rather just do the work, meaning they like to work one-on-one with people. They enjoy training, speaking, teaching, but to actually find the clients, they truly wish they didn't have to have those conversations. What is the first thing you would tell people to overcome that fear of selling?
The first thing is there's a misstep. There's a misconception, I guess I should say, out there that sales is something that you do to somebody. And I teach sales as it's something you do with. It's a collaborative approach. And if you're approaching sales like I'm here to do something to somebody, that feels manipulative. That feels gross. That's often why people shy away from it. And frankly, we've all been on the receiving end of somebody trying to do sales to us. So we know what it feels like when it's that really aggressive approach to selling. It's shaming people into buying. It's trying to push people past their objections. It's like all those things that, of course, if you're the kind of person who got into your business because you have somewhat of a servant's heart, you want to make an impact in the world, you want to contribute in a really positive way. Well, of course you wouldn't want to do any of those things that we talked about. So then you attribute it as, well, then I don't want to sell because I don't want to be that way. When you can reframe it and start looking at sales as this collaborative experience, and I teach sales that it's rapport is the foundation of everything that I teach. You have to have rapport with people. The relationship should always come first. And when you can put the relationship first, when you have rapport, the conversation of sales gets easier, not just for you as the seller, but frankly, for the buyer too. And then it becomes simple. Then it's like we're just having a conversation. And if you have a need and I have something that can meet that need, we can work together. And if you don't have a need, I'm not here to try to convince you that you need it. And if I don't have something that works for what your need is, then I'm just glad that we met and we'll have a good relationship. And maybe at some point you come back to me when you are ready. I imagine that I have a rapport bank account with every single person I come into contact with. And my goal is to always make deposits in that rapport bank account, whether the person's ever going to hire me or whether the person is ever going to whatever with me. I just want to make sure I'm making deposits. So I'm not just randomly word vomiting over people, trying to convince people to buy from me, even if they don't have a need. Or even when I know somebody is terrible at sales because I've been on the receiving end of it, I never go back to that person and be like, look, you're so bad at sales. You really should hire me, because that is a withdrawal from that bank account. Now, being really candid, I do sometimes make a misstep. I'm not perfect. So sometimes when I make a misstep, that is a withdrawal from that bank account. But when I have a big enough balance of rapport credits in that bank account, if and when I make a misstep, there's still a balance. They'll still give me a little bit of grace. But if I have no rapport balance with you and I come up to you out of the blue and be like, hey, I looked at your website. You are terrible at selling and you should really consider hiring me. That is making a withdrawal out of something that had no balance. You'll never hire me, because you'll be like, well, first of all, she's a jerk. And that felt, I feel pinched by her in some way. So if I ever do need help in sales, I'm never going to her.
Well, the saying by Maya Angelou, people forget what you said, but they remember how you made them feel.
Yeah.
So I think there you're hitting on that is I feel on defensive when someone criticizes me in any way, even if they're right, because I wasn't expecting to get that kind of feedback. I didn't ask for it. You don't have my permission to give it to me. So even if
That's
it
right.
is valuable, it's not appreciated. It's not taken the right way. So to get a person into the mindset of, yes, I would like to hear more, sounds to me like the right approach. I love it. I love the word rapport because I don't think that traditionally people feel that connection. In my experience, a lot of my clients seem to think that the client or the lead is some white rabbit and we're in the woods hunting for rabbits and we've got to catch a rabbit, when
Mm-hmm.
really you have to remember that the client is just a person like you. And so I think that feeling, well, how do I like to be sold to? I
Yes.
don't. So why would I do it to anyone else? Now, getting to that part, the whole action of selling to someone is a bit confusing for many, many people. How
Mm-hmm.
would you define selling as a verb?
Feel like selling is it's something that we're doing together. It's a conversation, and the objective is to understand, do you have a need, a problem, or a want? And I'm going to ask really smart questions to not only get the information that I need in order to establish whether or not I have a solution for you, but also ask really smart questions so that you, as the buyer, start to understand by the way I'm framing questions. Oh, this person has something that I need. So um, you start self-identifying that I am somebody you might want to buy from. So that's how I think about sales, is that it's this ongoing conversation. And by the way, conversation is two ways. It's not talking at people, it's talking with. So I'm not here to just show up and word vomit all over you and give you my sales pitch. I'm here to have a conversation. Things people do a lot of times in a sales conversation because they're nervous or they're uncomfortable with it. They do a lot of pre-planning. I'm going to say this and I'm going to say this thing and then I'm going to tell them about this other thing, and they spend I can't tell you how many times someone will hire me and they're like, "Nikki, I've prepped for 3 hours to have a discovery call with somebody." I'm like, "Why? We don't even know if they're a prospective client yet." That seems like a huge waste of time. So let's just have smart questions prepared. Let's go into it with being curious, and let's find out if what they're looking for, I might have a solution.
We want to have some time to find out with respect if that person is at a stage where they're considering this solution that I might have, or even know if we're aligned. And you can't do that if you're just putting your solution out there without pre-qualifying them. Um, so asking smart questions seems to be a very good approach. The problem that I'm seeing, however, is which questions to ask, because most people I know, they ask this one blanket question, how can I help you? And this is to a
Mm.
total stranger who doesn't know anything about you. You've approached them or you've just met them. What would be your advice for a good approach to someone starting up these kind of smart question asking conversations?
Well, first of all, I'm not a huge fan of the word help. I try to help my clients get it out of their language because it's what everybody says, first of all, and you don't want to sound like everybody. And the person that you're talking to, they sometimes help implies that there's something wrong with that person. I need help. So that can be a little bit diminishing. And so oftentimes, I actually had somebody say to me one time, like, I don't like when people say, "Can I help you?" Because I don't need help. I'm kind of offended that they're implying I need help. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's a really good perspective. So instead, you might have to put some context to the question. So, for instance, if I'm meeting you and I'm asking about you and your business, and I might say, how are things going for you in regards to sales? Do you find selling to be an easy process for you, or do you struggle with it at all? Because guess why? I teach selling. I teach people how to have more effective sales conversations. So by putting some context to it, your brain can go, "Oh, it will have an answer." But how can I help you is such a big open-ended question that the person has no context. And when you have no context to a question in this particular situation that we're talking about, our brains are lazy and our brains aren't going to come up with a realistic response. So if people don't know where you're coming from, they can't actually give you an answer. So you need to put some context to it. So, and I actually like to say, is there some way I might be a resource to you instead of how can I help you? Because most of us like resources and we're happy to accept resources that are going to make our life better or easier in some way. So, but I still wouldn't just walk up to anybody on the street and be like, how can I be a resource to you? It would have to have some context to the question.
I love it. And one thing I really loved in your book was how I would describe this as permission based selling, where you
Yep.
ask a person a question. Would you like to hear more about some potential solutions that I provide in regards to your sales or things like that? Because a lot of times we've been taught that we should just say, "Hi, I'm Krista. I'm a business mentor and a business strategist, and I can help you grow your business. Would you like to book a call with me? Or would you like to set up a meeting?" When in reality, the person might already have a business coach, or the person might be making more money than me. In fact, appearances, we don't know them at all.
Mhm.
We're
Mhm.
strangers. So I have just launched into trying to sell them my services, which could come off as being offensive. In your book, you talk a lot about asking that question. Would you like to hear some of the solutions I provide in regards to sales or business mentorship or whatever you do before you offer it? Um, Now, how did you come about this? Was this just an extreme form of politeness, or did you just see an increase in positive response when you started doing that?
Well, so my background is I have a pretty extensive background in sales. I was in the tech space for many years, closing big deals to some of the largest companies in the world. And I was competing and I worked in a very male dominated industry and it was competing in this really aggressive, like, you mentioned earlier, like going out and hunting the white rabbit. A lot of these men would compare sales to like, I'm out here hunting the big game, which always felt really gross to me that you're treating people like there's something you're gonna go out and kill, and I didn't like that, and so I needed to find a way and also just to be really candid, I tend to fall on the introverted side, and I can be quite shy, so to be successful in sales, I had to find my way that worked, and what I found is that I'm a good relationship builder, and when I really wanted to dig in and really hone my selling skills, I started studying neurolinguistic programming. And if that's the new term to anybody listening, NLP for short is really the study of communication. And I started studying NLP because I thought it would make me better at sales, and it absolutely did. But really what it did is it made me a much better communicator. And in when you're studying NLP, depending on who's teaching it, it's very focused around language because neuro linguistic language, right? That's the L in the NLP language. So there's a lot of language in there. And I started noticing these language patterns, and the way that you can often move people into action is through asking questions. And sometimes those questions need to be in the form of permission, because one of the presuppositions of NLP is that nobody is broken, and treating people like they're broken or something's wrong with them in some way is really doing a disservice to that person, but also to the rapport that you have with the person. So I don't believe that you should be selling to anybody without their permission. So all these people who show up in my inbox and tell me all the things that are wrong with my website and, tell me why I need to, hire them to do my Instagram account because I don't have enough followers, like they don't have my permission, and it's super offensive to approach me that way. So I teach when you ask people's permission, they're much more likely to either say yes or no. But when they say yes, they're more open to hearing what it is that you have to offer and how you might actually be a resource to them in some way versus just shutting down, because we are so bombarded with, I mean, I don't know how many emails you've gotten today of somebody in your inbox telling you what's wrong with you and why you should buy their product. But chances are you've probably gotten more than 5. And we're sick of it. We're so bombarded with everybody talking at us, telling us what's wrong with us, that we shut down. And as a society, we just shut down. And if you want to really open people up, you have to treat them with respect. And permission is one of the ways of showing I respect you. And if you decline giving me permission to sell to you, I won't, because I respect you as a person. And if you do give me permission to sell to you, then I will treat that with the respect that it deserves. And I will only put an offer in front of you that is going to meet your needs and solve your problem.
I just love that. I love everything about your sales methods. I have not trained with you, but your book alone has blown me away. And thanks to you, I've become much more self-conscious about my bossy side of me and trying to rein that inner know-it-all in, because I think that when you consider yourself advanced in any type of subject, whether it's language, athletics, health, you're very knowledgeable in a certain subject. What happens is it becomes glaringly obvious what people are doing wrong in that topic, and you cannot stop that. I'm aware immediately of those problems, but what I've tried to do now is not to just launch into, you're doing this wrong and you're doing this wrong and this and that. Instead, I'm trying to be much more permission based and say to myself, maybe they don't need any of this advice. Maybe they're very happy with how it is. Maybe that's not even a priority right now for them. Like for you, your Instagram account, they have no idea if you want to grow your Instagram account. Maybe that's not where you see your audience, primarily due to age group, demographics, whatever. So to assume that these things are as urgent or as top priority as I think they are just because I'm selling that service is absolutely unacceptable. How often do you consider checking in with them? Or is it over?
Well,
Because sometimes I have clients who make that mistake. It's like, okay, he said that his sales are good. He doesn't need any help. And it's almost like that's it. I'll never speak to him again. And it's awkward because he's already said, I don't need help right now. How do you like re-engage people, or how often should I do that?
Well, I think you need to ask permission to do that. So if they say like, I'm not really looking for help around sales, I would ask, would you be open to us staying in touch and just, maybe check in with each other every couple months and see if, if at some point I have something that might be a good option for you or a solution. So if you get that permission, then I think you check in probably once a quarter if there's no need at all. But if there is some kind of a need, the thing that you don't want to do is postpone the sale. So if there is an opportunity to earn the person's business, you don't want to say, well, I'll just follow up with you in a couple of months. Like get that next time scheduled with them. Like if they're like, well, we can't really make a decision now, but we know we need this down the road. So I would say, well, what do you think about us scheduling another time to chat? Let's have a circle back call scheduled on our calendars so we can touch base with each other and see what's changed. And then maybe something has changed in my business as well, and I'll have a new solution or a new option that maybe we don't even know about yet. Would you be open to getting a time scheduled on our calendars? I like to I like to have people scheduled on my calendar to move through the process. I find that it's much easier to earn people's business versus just randomly reaching out to people that have shown no interest. Now, in my business and the way that I do my business is people have lots of ways to stay connected. I have a podcast. I send out a weekly newsletter. In front of mind, in front of my subscribers, the people who have said, Nikki, we want to stay in touch with you in some way. I stay in touch with them on a regular basis. I put offers in front of them. Like I said, put newsletter content out. There's all kinds of things that happen throughout the year that they get invited to participate in. So that keeps that front of mind. And then I show up in places where my ideal clients are regularly. I guest on podcasts all the time. I speak at events. There's all these things that I do. And so by doing that, by continuing to put myself out there, it allows for people who aren't ready now because things change, right? No matter what you offer, somebody might go, well, I don't need that. I don't see myself ever needing that. Well, something in their life could change in 6 months or a year, and then they may need it. You want to be the person that they go, you know what? Now that I need this, I'm going to go reach back out to Nikki because I loved our conversation. She was so kind and she never made me feel weird about not needing her service. And now I can go back and be like, hey, guess what, Nikki? I think I need some help. And so you always want to be building that rapport. I mentioned that word earlier.
And you have mentioned something. I'm a marketer, so I'm on the opposite end, but you mentioned a lot of things that I teach in marketing. You said you have a podcast, you have a newsletter, you show up and guest speak on other people's podcasts, and you regularly speak at events. So those are all ways of staying top of mind. And in the marketing world, we say that a person needs to have 7 touch points with your name, even if it's not with you directly personal, but to see something about you, to hear about you 7 times before they really think of you as an authority in whatever it is you do, or they're curious enough to really go check you out. So I think this all ties back into being top of mind and staying on people's radar. Another thing you said that's good is that you say you launch things regularly throughout the year, or you have stuff going on, right?
Yep.
And I think that a lot of experts, they sit back and they say, well, I'm open for hire. You can come hire me. But the truth is they don't have any products. They don't have a book. They don't have courses. They don't have workshops. They never offer any kind of boot camps or short trainings. And I'd like to tell them, you're really missing out because maybe this person didn't want to go into your 6-month or 12-month program. A person might hire you if you say, hey, I've got this, maybe it's even a free event, like a free webinar or a 1-day boot camp that's affordable. Why not? So what I call that is an easy yes. If you don't put out easy yes offers, that selling staircase is way too high. You're like, it's all or nothing, right? Don't hire me or hire me for a very high amount. And people also feel a little bit subconsciously uncomfortable around money. Sometimes people don't dare ask me my rates. There's this uncomfortable. So they say no, thank you, because they assume they can't afford me. So, do you have any tactics for easing the money part into the conversation so that you don't put them in the uncomfortable position of saying, how much?
Yeah, that's such a great question. So I love what you said about giving people the opportunity. I always say this as it's like give people the opportunity to dip their toe in the water with you, get a little taste of what you do. And there should be multiple ways for them to do that because we don't always know how people like to consume or how they like to come into your universe. Some people might just come in and sign up for your 6-month program, but most people will want to test the waters a little bit. So we got to give them opportunity to do that. Now, as far as rates go, if you're putting the person on the spot where they're having to go like, "Well, how much is it?" Or I'm just going to say no because gosh, I've seen her on these things and she seems like a big deal and she's probably super expensive. So that's putting them in this really uncomfortable place of having to ask. So one thing that I'll say, and this is different from a lot of what a lot of people say, but I feel really strongly about it, and I can defend my position on it most times, is that I believe that you should have some pricing on your website. So if somebody wants to go and look to see what's going on for you, they can look on your website and get a sense. Now, if you haven't brought up pricing, you might need to ask them, you might need to bring up the question like, what are you looking to invest in something like this? And if they're like, I don't know, then you could give a range. You could say, well, working with me can start as, small as $10 for a book, and it can go all the way up to $1,000 a month. Given that range, where do you think you fall? Or you could say, I have three main ways to work with me and they start from $147 a month and go all the way up to about $1,000 a month. Are you more interested in something that's like a group program, or are you more interested in private one-on-one work? So I'm going to give them a range and then I'm going to ask them a question. And then I'm going to wait and I'm going to let them answer the question and see what they say, because based on their response, that'll let me know where we should go next or what I should spend time focus on. Because I'm not going to tell you all the feeds and speeds about working with me in all the different ways if you're like, I'm not somebody who would ever pay $1,000 a month for coaching. Okay, well, I have other options. Let's focus on some of these other options.
I love that because it can go two ways. If you think, oh, I have to offer them the lowest thing just because I'm insecure and I want to make sure I get the client, you may be missing a huge opportunity because this person may be absolutely fine with paying thousands of dollars a month and they expected your rate to be even higher. So they're pleased to find out it's only 1,000.
Right. You you never want to sell from somebody else's wallet. You shouldn't be projecting your limiting beliefs. It's not your job to recommend what you think somebody can afford. It's your job to recommend what you know will make an impact for them. And that can go both ways. You shouldn't sell somebody a $50,000 program when a $5,000 program is going to solve their issue or solve their problem. But you cannot make an assumption that nobody would probably ever pay me $50,000 because I wouldn't pay $50,000 to do this. Well, you're not your client. You're not your ideal client. You can't ever usually be your ideal client because you already know what you know. Why would you hire yourself to do something you already know how to do? It doesn't make sense. So you shouldn't ever sell from somebody else's wallet. Your job is to be the expert. Your job is to recommend the solution that is going to meet the need, and regardless of what the price point is. Now, if somebody says to me, yeah, that'd be really great, that would solve my problem if I did this, $50,000 program, Nikki, but that's just not even in my, that's not even in my ballpark of what I could do right now in my business. Well, then I can take a step down. I can say, well, what were you thinking about investing? Let's see what kind of a solution we come up with for you. And I think a lot of times people are, it's like one or nothing. And if you only have one option, which I think you even said this a little bit earlier, Krista, about giving people options, or having different ways for them to come in to your business, whether it's a podcast or a challenge or a course or something, like we got to let people be where they're at and we have to believe them and we have to give them an opportunity to get started. Now, if you have one option, the answer is going to be, I want that option or I don't. But if you have multiple options, then it could be, here's some options for you. up to 3, never more than 3 as far as a recommendation for a client. And you could say, of those 3, which is the best fit for you right now? Let them tell you. They know themselves better than you know them.
And that's why what you said earlier about sales being a conversation is so important. Because instead of me just sending out this one proposal and then waiting for them to be sticker shocked and say, wow, that's way higher than I thought, so never mind, and make them feel uncomfortable about that money thing. If you offer them several options, they feel like they're empowered. It's their business, it's their life. They know their needs much better than you. So by putting those multiple options on the table, it kind of takes off that pressure from them of yes or no. And it's
Mhm.
not yes or no, it's A or B or potentially
Or
C.
C.
And you've
Yeah.
educated them on each offer, and you're like, if you do this, this is not, this is a group setting. So, you may, would that work for you one-on-one? It's going to be more intense, but you're going to get there a lot faster because you've got my attention on your stuff. So those are all considerations they need to understand. Um, and I loved what you said about price transparency, because there's this whole philosophy of cat and mouse game in sales. It's like, you have to book a call in order to find out what my rates are. That's such a waste of time for a lot of people. Um, I understand the value of, well, my rates could change or based on your needs. There's certain things like I used to run a marketing agency, and I found that putting just a plain old price list was too hard because people's individual situations were so complex that I had to say, look, I'm going to have you fill out this questionnaire or have a discovery call, get the answers to those questions, and we're going to have to give you a proposal. But one of the first questions was, what is the budget that you were thinking about? And always ballpark it. Never tell them, okay, I have $105 for you. It's like, were you thinking under 500? Were you thinking 1,000? Were you thinking 10,000? Like, what are we talking about in terms of the capacity? Because I could probably come up with a solution for you at all those price points. So I need to know that before I waste my time preparing the proposal. And only when they would commit to me to tell me, yes, I feel comfortable at this range, I would say, okay, I'm going to give you a high-end proposal option and a budget-friendly proposal option, just so you know what the differences would be. And a lot of times they would end up buying more than they told me they wanted to buy because they just saw how much more they would get. And
Mhm.
it's like a sales car salesman taking you and said, would you like to sit in this wonderful leather seated Tesla? And then taking you over to the Ford Fiesta. Afterwards, you're a goner. You're going to find a way to buy that Tesla. So it's a tactic I learned, but it worked in a good way, because people sometimes are just scared of making an investment. But once you ease them into it and you talk about how the options are to pay, they're fine because they really do want that Tesla in the end, right? In business.
Right.
So that cat and mouse game is a big problem. The other thing that I wanted to ask you about that's a very big problem for a lot of my clients is the calls. Because it's one thing to have these conversations. How's your business doing? Are you struggling with sales, or have you got that covered? Would you like some help in sales? That's one thing. But it's another thing to book a discovery call with a person. And most of my clients botch those. They do a terrible job. And then they freak out because there's the euphoria before the call. I've got a
Mhm.
call. I'm going to nail this big client. Yay.
Mhm.
And then after the call, how did it go? How did it go? I don't know. And then they're just like waiting on standby. How early can I follow up with them? Is it okay if I email them the very next day and ask them, have they made a decision? What if they ghost me and I don't hear from them at all? And just that disappointment or that anxiety associated. Do you have a better solution for my customers?
I absolutely do. So we've mentioned a couple times the selling staircase, which is my signature framework for sales. It's a 5-step process. It's the book that you read. I think that was one of my books that you read, is that the selling staircase. So the discovery step is step 3 in the selling staircase. And that's where you need to have a set list of questions. That's where You are going to, based on their answers to the question, move them to step 4, potentially on that call, which is the proposal. Now, if you're going to send somebody a formal proposal, or there's going to be, they have the I need to think about it response, you should attempt on that call to schedule your next call. So you shouldn't get off that call going, I don't know if I should email them tomorrow or next week. I don't know what the process is now. And now you're wasting a ton of energy and time trying to decide what to do. And the other huge thing that's about this is you've just added to your client's to-do list, which is a huge mistake in sales, because most of you know this. Most of us die with our to-do lists undone. So if you add something to somebody's to-do list, what are the chances you're ever going to make it to the top of their to-do list? Slim to none. So then you are in this like ghosting opportunity now. You've opened yourself up to all of this. And again, it's just, it's it's so bad for your mindset as a seller to go like, should I call? Should I email? What should I say? It's awkward now. Well, if you do what I'm going to say next, it's not ever awkward. So in the conversation, the person says, Nikki, I need to think about it. I go, great. About how much time do you think you'll need? Let's schedule a circle back call now. And that way I can answer any additional questions that come to mind, and we can talk about next steps for working together. I wait, let them answer, and I go, great. Can we get this on our calendars for next Thursday at 10? And then now they're on my calendar Thursday at 10. And more importantly, I'm on their calendar Thursday at 10. So when I call, they're going to answer. They're much more likely to answer. And they're much more likely to have actually thought about it and made some evaluation about whether or not they're ready to move forward. And I'm not playing this cat or mouse. I'm not playing this like, should I call? Should I email? Should I do this? Should I do that? Like, I don't ever want any of my clients up in their head worried about that type of stuff. It's a waste of energy. It's a time suck. It's a like energy drain. It's just not good for you. And worse, it's terrible for the client or prospect. So schedule your circle back calls. It will absolutely make a difference in the way you close business, because either the person will think about it the day before, because they'll look at their calendar and be like, oh, I thought about it. I've decided maybe I'm not ready to move forward with hiring Nikki, so I'm just going to cancel the call. Great. Now I don't have to get on a call with you for you to tell me no, because now it's done. And now I can move on and take that time and go focus on growing my business in some other way. Or you get on the call, you have a question for me, I answer your question, and most of the time I close my circle back calls, because people are like, I just had this one last lingering question. I needed your answer, and I feel good now about moving forward with working with you. Great. Now I have a new client. Now they're going to get some solution that's going to solve a problem or meet a need. So you got to schedule circle back calls. That's the, like, of all the things that we've talked about today, if you can just add that piece into your sales conversation, into your discovery process, it will absolutely make a difference to your bottom line this year.
Nikki, if only I would have known you when I was a 23-year-old hustler on those cold calls and deal with the cold calls. It was so much wasted time and energy. And I wish I really would have known that there was a better way to do things, because I truly don't like cold calling now, nor do I ever recommend my clients to do it, because I respect you. And for me, respect means valuing your time. And so for me, the worst thing you can do to a person is to just show up unannounced and take up their time, because I don't want you to do that to me. So everything goes into my schedule, and that's how I do business. I love everything you shared. I could keep you on this call for another hour, but people, just trust me. Nikki is the person to go to for your sales trainings. And I also want to say that everyone should go to Amazon.com and look up Nikki and get her books, because that's how I found Nikki, The Selling Staircase. And lastly, you have a bunch of trainings on your website, I think, right?
Resources up there that has some training content. I also have a group coaching program where you get access to my training center. And that's really where the crux of the majority of my training content is housed. And then I also teach master classes once a quarter. I teach a master class. I have one coming up here in a couple weeks called Sales Scripts for Increasing Influence. It's all about upping your game when it comes to language, how to write, how to say, and how to listen for the language of influence so that you're able to move people into action more fluidly and conversationally, and all with building rapport.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much for coming on the show, Nikki. Can't wait to stay in
Thanks.
touch with you and see all these things that you're preparing.
Thanks for having me. I appreciate you.